It was one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. From the moment I woke up, I felt drained and sluggish, as though I hadn't slept at all. For the past few days, I'd been feeling unwell, but today felt different. My entire body ached. My back, shoulders, and even my feet throbbed with discomfort. I hadn't realized just how much I'd been pushing myself throughout the week. The endless tasks, cleaning, cooking, running errands, and managing everything at home, had kept me constantly on the move, without a moment's rest. But today, it was as if my body had finally reached its limit and demanded I stop. Every muscle in my body felt tight, as though they were begging for relief. My neck ached, as if a heavy weight had settled on it, and even simple movements made my arms and legs feel sluggish and unwilling. This wasn't the first time I'd felt exhaustion like this. But today the fatigue was overwhelming, and no amount of effort seemed to shake it. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping it would pass. But soon I realized I couldn't. I sank into the couch, thinking the pain might subside, but instead, it seemed to grow worse. I knew I needed to take it easy, but the thought of being unable to do anything filled me with frustration. I just wanted to feel normal again, but the hours dragged on, and my body refused to cooperate. Tiredness was nothing new to me, but this time, it felt as though the weight of the entire week had come crashing down at once. As I sat on the couch, trying to find a comfortable position, every shift brought new aches, particularly in my back. It felt like the discomfort would never end. I stretched and tried to relax, but nothing worked. I wished desperately to feel better, but my body remained sore and exhausted. The house was quiet, and I began to wonder if I should simply give up and rest for the day. As I sat there, contemplating what to do, I heard footsteps approaching. It was Jason, my stepson. Jason had always been attentive and kind, the type of person who noticed when something wasn't right. Since marrying his father, I'd developed a close and friendly bond with him. He was respectful and considerate, always willing to help whenever he could. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern as he noticed me sitting on the couch. I managed a small smile, trying to hide how uncomfortable I felt, but I knew he could tell something was wrong. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure what to say. I didn't want to seem weak or burden him with my troubles, but the pain had become too much to bear, and I realized I couldn't handle it alone. "Oh!" After a pause, I sighed and admitted, "Actually, I think I could use some help. My back really hurts. Would you mind giving me a quick massage?" I felt a little nervous asking, not wanting to make him uncomfortable, but I knew Jason's kind nature and trusted he wouldn't mind. He smiled warmly and nodded. "Of course I'll help you," he said without hesitation. Jason, at 24, was thoughtful and caring, and his willingness to assist only reaffirmed what I already knew about him. I felt grateful as he moved behind me and began to work on my shoulders. As Jason started to massage my shoulders, I felt the tension in my muscles begin to ease. His hands moved gently, creating soothing circles along my back. I closed my eyes, letting myself relax for the first time all day. The relief was immediate. It felt as though a weight I'd been carrying was slowly being lifted. For those few moments, I didn't have to think about anything else. The pain melted away, replaced by a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in days. His touch was kind and caring, free of any discomfort. It was a simple act of kindness, one that anyone might offer to someone they cared about. But to me, it meant a great deal. I realized how fortunate I was to have such a thoughtful stepson, someone who looked out for me and made sure I was okay. It wasn't anything more than a gesture of support, but it left a lasting impression. As Jason continued, I felt myself relaxing further. His hands worked skillfully, easing the tightness in my muscles, and for the first time that day, I felt like I could breathe without pain. The quiet atmosphere in the room, combined with the gentle rhythm of his touch, created a sense of peace that was almost tangible. As he moved his hands lower down my back, He said something that surprised me. "You have a really nice body," he commented with a kind smile. His voice was soft, and his tone friendly. There was nothing inappropriate in his expression or words. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. It caught me off guard, and I felt a little embarrassed. It was a compliment I hadn't expected, especially in this situation. For a second, I wondered if I had misheard him, but then I realized he was simply being nice, offering a genuine compliment without any hidden meaning. I smiled shyly, feeling both flustered and appreciative. "Thanks," I replied, my voice quiet but sincere. His words, though unexpected, brought a small sense of comfort on a difficult day. Hearing something positive, even something simple, made me feel a bit more valued and less weighed down by the challenges I'd been facing. It was a reminder of how even small gestures of kindness can have a significant impact, especially when you're feeling drained and low. Jason's words weren't inappropriate or uncomfortable. They were simply thoughtful, and they made me feel better about myself in that moment. It was one of those rare occasions where a simple compliment could brighten your day and make things seem just a little bit easier. When the massage was finally over, I felt noticeably better. The sharp pain in my back had subsided, and I could move without wincing. Sitting up on the couch, I stretched slightly and gave Jason a grateful smile. "Thank you so much," I said, genuinely appreciative. He returned my smile, his expression warm and kind. "No problem," he replied. "Anytime." That moment felt like it shifted something between us. It wasn't that anything strange or uncomfortable had occurred, but from that day forward, there was a new ease in our relationship. We had always gotten along well, but now it felt like there was a deeper understanding. That simple act of kindness seemed to create a stronger bond between us. Words weren't necessary to convey it. We both just seemed to know. I think it was because Jason had shown so much thoughtfulness and care. He didn't have to offer his help, and he certainly didn't have to give me a massage, but he did, and it made me feel valued. It reminded me of how much he had matured and how much we had both learned from one another. Being a step-parent isn't always straightforward. There are challenges and moments of awkwardness, but in that moment, I realized just how much I respected Jason and how much he respected me in return. We had found a balance, a mutual understanding, and I was incredibly thankful for it. In the weeks that followed, life seemed to return to normal. Jason and I continued to share the usual everyday moments, laughing at silly things, talking about our day, and enjoying the comforting rhythm of routine. We would watch TV together, chat about what was happening at work or school, and sometimes just sit together in peaceful silence. It felt as though nothing had changed. Our respect for one another remained steadfast, and our relationship stayed strong. But then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I hadn't seen it coming at all. It was just an ordinary day, and I was busy with my usual tasks, thinking everything was as it should be. That's when I noticed something shift again, and I realized things weren't quite as simple as I'd thought. It was late in the afternoon, and I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The day had been long, and I could feel the fatigue setting in. My feet ached from standing for hours, and my mind was tired from all the tasks I'd been juggling. As I chopped vegetables, I tried to focus, but all I really wanted was to sit down and rest. As I worked, Jason walked into the kitchen. I noticed him glancing at me, clearly observing how exhausted I looked. He didn't say anything immediately, but I could tell he was paying attention. After a moment, he spoke. His voice gentle yet firm. "Let me help you relax again," he offered. "And maybe you can do the same for me. You've been working hard all week." I paused, surprised by his suggestion. It was thoughtful of him to notice how tired I was, and it felt good to know he cared. I hadn't expected him to offer his help again, but the idea of taking a moment to relax sounded wonderful. It was one of those small moments where someone's kindness stands out, and I couldn't help but feel grateful. I smiled, a little taken aback by his offer. It wasn't something I had anticipated, but the sincerity in his tone made it clear he genuinely wanted to help. My body was aching from the long day, and every muscle felt sore. The idea of receiving help, especially from someone who cared, felt like a relief. At that moment, I realized I could use the support Jason was offering. "Are you sure?" I asked softly, my voice curious but cautious. I wanted to ensure he was truly willing, and part of me wondered if it was the right decision to accept his help again. While I felt a bit uncertain, another part of me was ready to accept. Jason nodded confidently, his expression warm and reassuring. I could see his genuine eagerness to assist. Together, we continued preparing dinner, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, and setting the table. It became one of those moments where the task at hand became secondary to the enjoyment of working together. We laughed and talked as we cooked, the kitchen filled with delicious aromas as the meal came together. When we finished cooking, I realized how much fun we'd had. The food smelled amazing, and there was a shared sense of accomplishment between us. As we set everything on the table, we talked about plans to relax later that evening. Jason seemed excited about spending time together, and I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. After dinner, we decided to create a peaceful atmosphere to help me unwind. We dimmed the lights and lit a few candles, their soft glow adding warmth to the room. Gentle music played in the background, and I could already feel the tension of the day beginning to fade. Jason, ever thoughtful, offered to help me relax further. He guided me to a chair, his touch light but assured, as he began massaging my shoulders. His fingers worked into the knots of tension that had built up over hours of stress. Each movement was deliberate, and the relief was immediate. It felt as though the weight I had been carrying was being slowly lifted. As Jason continued, I found myself sinking deeper into the chair, my muscles loosening with every movement. This time it felt different. Almost as though the stress wasn't just leaving my body, but my mind as well. The room was calm, and for the first time in days, I felt truly at peace. Then, unexpectedly, Jason paused. His hands rested gently on my back, as his voice broke the silence, soft and uncertain. "Would you like me to continue?" he asked. "Oh, I could offer you something else. Something that might help you feel even more relaxed," he said softly. His words lingered in the air, and I turned slightly to meet his gaze. Before I could respond, he added hesitantly, "A happy ending." My heart skipped a beat, his words catching me entirely off guard. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I froze, unsure how to respond. The quiet tension between us seemed to grow, making the air feel heavy. This wasn't what I had anticipated, but the way he spoke, with a mix of confidence and vulnerability, made me pause. It struck me then how much of a connection we had built over time, one that was deeper than I had realized. There was a trust between us now, undeniable and surprising. His honest tone and the openness of the moment highlighted how comfortable we had grown around each other. We had crossed boundaries before, but this felt different, intimate, in a way that made me feel both exposed and strangely safe. A wave of emotion surged through me, curiosity, hesitation, and something stronger. A pull. A longing that I couldn't ignore. For a brief moment, I questioned if this was the right choice. Would giving in change everything between us? But as I held his gaze, something stirred within me. My body, still humming with the day's tension, seemed to respond before my mind could. Heat rose in me, a desire I had tried to suppress, now surging to the surface with undeniable intensity. I hesitated for just a moment longer, my breath catching in my throat, and realized that the feelings between us couldn't be ignored anymore. Despite my uncertainty, I knew I wanted this. I wanted him in this moment, in this way. The vulnerability I felt only seemed to amplify the intensity of my desire. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my thoughts and, with a mix of anticipation and surrender, whispered, "Yes." His face lit up with a wide grin, and the spark in his eyes made my heart race. His smile wasn't just playful, it held a deeper meaning, one that hinted at excitement, eagerness, and something more profound. He stepped closer, his presence filling the space between us. "I'm ready for you today," he said, his voice steady yet warm. The way he spoke, so confident and assured, sent a wave of energy through me. There was sincerity in his words, a promise of something deeper, and it left me breathless. His expression softened as he looked at me, the smile lingering, but now carrying an intensity that matched the weight of his words. It felt as though the space between us had shifted, the world around us fading into the background. In that moment, nothing else mattered, just him, his words, and the way they made me feel both wanted and seen, ready to embrace whatever came next. To my surprise, he approached me with a tenderness and depth I hadn't experienced before, a mix of gentle care and intensity that resonated within me. It felt like something between us had fundamentally changed, the air around us thickening with an unspoken understanding. Every movement he made was intentional, every touch deliberate, aligning perfectly with the moment. I could feel it, a shift, a deeper connection forming that I hadn't expected but couldn't deny. His attentiveness was remarkable, as though he wasn't just touching me, but discovering who I truly was. Each gesture felt careful and meaningful, not just physical, but profoundly intimate. It was as if we were exploring something raw and real, something that went beyond the surface. There was no rush, no distractions, just the connection we shared in that space. It felt as though we were building a bond that grew stronger with every passing second. For the first time, we weren't merely close in proximity, we were emotionally exposed, vulnerable, and fully present with one another. His touch, firm yet gentle, conveyed a level of respect and understanding that words couldn't capture. This wasn't just about fleeting attraction. It felt like we were both discovering something profound, something neither of us had encountered before. The intensity of it made my heart race, yet it also brought a sense of peace, soothing the deepest parts of me. As we shared this experience, everything felt different. There was a calmness I hadn't expected, a quiet serenity that enveloped us like a warm embrace. Time seemed to slow, and there was no need to rush or chase fleeting moments. Every movement, every glance was deliberate, yet effortless, as though we had always known how to move in sync. It felt as though we weren't two separate people anymore, but two souls intertwined, moving together in perfect harmony as the outside world faded away. It was as if we had unlocked a space deep within, a place where vulnerability and trust flowed freely without fear or judgment. Each touch felt intentional, as though we were uncovering not only each other, but the depth of our connection. The intensity of it was overwhelming yet captivating, pulling me in with every beat of my heart. Despite the strength of the emotions, there was an undeniable comfort in it, a sanctuary I hadn't known I needed. Every moment felt natural, as though it was exactly where I was meant to be. For the first time, I felt completely at ease. All my worries and doubts seemed to dissolve into the air around us. There was no tension, no hesitation. I wasn't questioning what this meant or where it might lead. It simply felt right, genuine and true. In that moment, I surrendered to the experience, trusting him completely. As we continued to move together, lost in the rhythm of one another's presence, it became clear that this was more than just an intimate moment. It was a revelation, a shared clarity and connection that left me breathless, yet fulfilled. There was no guilt, no lingering doubt. It felt as though everything that had once held me back, every fear, every question, every uncertainty, had vanished. The weight of the past, the pressure of expectations, and the doubts that often clouded my mind had all disappeared. It felt like the world had paused, leaving only the two of us, fully present in the here and now. In that moment, we were truly free. Free from judgment, from the burdens of the past, and from the need for explanations. There was nothing but us, existing in the pure, unspoken connection we had created. The silence between us spoke volumes, every glance and touch conveying more than words ever could. We reveled in the simplicity of it, in the mutual understanding that we were both entirely invested in this moment, and in each other. It wasn't just physical, it was something much deeper, something that transcended the ordinary. It felt as though we were discovering a new layer of our bond, one that deepened with every second. The satisfaction didn't come from the moment itself, but from the realization that we had both entered this space without hesitation or fear. There was a balance of desire and tenderness between us that left us breathless in the most fulfilling way. As we lingered in the afterglow, a quiet contentment washed over me. What we had shared was truly unique, and as I looked at him, I realized that in this moment, we had both found exactly what we needed. No more, no less.